In the year 2089, it happened. Across the world, every human being, no matter their age, location, or state of consciousness, saw it. A pulse, like a ripple of iridescent static, washed across reality. Buildings wavered like reflections on water. The sky fractured into geometric grids before snapping back into a shimmering blue. For exactly 3.4 seconds, the universe felt as if it skipped like an old record, a dimensional reboot flicker. Some said it looked like the world had been peeled apart, thin layers of reality slipping sideways and restacking. Others described seeing 2 or 3 versions of their surroundings at once. Cities overlaid with ruins, forests layered with luminous alien trees, oceans filled with impossible structures submerged just beneath the waves. Everyone remembered it. No one could deny it. Within hours, videos flooded the net. Security cameras captured cars momentarily hovering inches above the ground, planes folding in and out of existence, people appearing duplicated before snapping back into place. Infants cried uncontrollably. Animals fled in chaotic herds. Sleepers woke up gasping, remembering dreams where they were someone else. Governments tried to control the narrative at first. A global magnetic anomaly, they said. Solar interference combined with mass hysteria. But that explanation didn't hold. Scientists from independent labs, citizen journalists, even casual observers pointed out. Seismographs worldwide recorded synchronized dimensional spikes, not Earth tremors. Clocks skipped 3.4 seconds ahead without explanation. Satellites outside Earth's atmosphere also flickered, not just Earth's surface. People with medical implants reported firmware updates without any network connection. 3 major theories emerged. The simulation theory. A vocal group of tech philosophers insisted that Earth was a simulation and the flicker was a system reboot. They claimed reality had been patched, upgraded. New phenomena seemed to support this. People discovering subtle changes in familiar places, personal memories diverging slightly, even skills surfacing in people that they had no memory of learning. The dimensional convergence theory. Physicists argued that 2 parallel universes had brushed against each other. The flicker was the result of quantum resonance between neighboring realities, a cosmic accident. If true, it implied that reality itself was unstable, and future flickers might be more violent. The consciousness threshold theory. Mystics, neurologists, and rogue AI theorists proposed a stranger idea. Humanity's collective consciousness had reached a tipping point, creating enough psychic energy to momentarily reshape reality. The flicker was a glimpse of a future where thought could rewrite matter itself. In the aftermath, world governments created the Reality Stability Initiative, RSI, a global coalition of scientists and AI tasked with monitoring and preventing another flicker. Religious movements sprouted overnight, some viewing the flicker as divine, others as a warning of impending judgment. Corporations raced to exploit the event, marketing flicker vision experiences, claiming to help people unlock residual abilities imprinted during the reboot. Individuals faced personal reckonings. Relationships ended as people realized they'd seen different versions of their lives. Some even began to question if their loved ones had truly come back from the flicker unchanged. And in the quiet corners of the world, strange phenomena increased. Objects appearing where none had been. New stars glimmering in night skies that astronomers swore hadn't been there before. Whispers soft and sweet, drifting in the wind, in languages no living human spoke. The world had flickered once. The real fear was simple. Would it happen again? And what would come through next time? Chapter 2, Echoes. The world after the flicker wasn't the same. Not in any dramatic, apocalyptic way. No skyscrapers toppled, no continents cracked apart, but in subtler, stranger ways. Echoes of that brief, cosmic reboot clung to everything like static on an old radio. Elias Vance noticed it first at the university. He was a physicist, or at least he had been before physics itself had started behaving like a rumor rather than a rule. Sitting in his lab, he stared at the pendulum experiment he had set up 2 weeks earlier. The long silver sphere should have swung back and forth in a perfect, predictable arc. It always had. But today it twitched mid-swing, as if invisible fingers plucked it sideways. The monitoring equipment caught it, too. A fractional deviation, a momentary violation of inertia. And the weirdest part, the timestamp on the anomaly, 3.4 seconds into the recording. The same number burned into everyone's mind since the flicker. Across the world, more disturbances whispered into the lives of the ordinary. In Sao Paulo, a young woman dreamed vividly every night, only to discover the next day that new architectural designs had appeared in her sketchbook, drawn in her own hand, but completely foreign to her memory. In Nairobi, herds of animals migrated along paths they hadn't used in centuries, as if they remembered different maps of the earth. In Tokyo, street musicians played melodies that shouldn't have existed, impossible, hypnotic progressions that listeners swore they almost remembered, like a song from a life they never lived. Governments tried to quarantine the anomalies. The Reality Stability Initiative dispatched sleek black drones to monitor hot zones, areas where echoes of the flicker persisted strongest. They released daily reports reassuring the public that reality remains fundamentally intact. But everyone knew the world was haunted by itself. Elias found his hands shaking as he scrolled through footage on the underground channels, footage the RSI tried to suppress. A man walking through a crowded street, flickering, momentarily transparent, before solidifying again. A desert that overnight became a lush field of bioluminescent plants, only to wither back into sand by morning. Entire city blocks where time stuttered and blurred like an old videotape rewinding for a breath. Each video ended the same way, a pulse, a resonance. A sound almost like a heartbeat, but made of something deeper than sound. Tum. Tum. It was as if the world had been rebooted, yes, but the process hadn't completed. The system was still syncing, still loading, and the syncing wasn't happening smoothly. That night, staring out over the quiet city, Elias wrote a message to his colleagues. We were wrong to assume it was a one-time event. The flicker wasn't a glitch. It was a handshake. Something on the other side reached out. And it's still reaching. We need to prepare. He hit send, heart pounding. Outside his window, the city lights shivered, not because of an earthquake, not because of a storm, but because the very skin of reality rippled, faint but unmistakable. Elias realized something chilling. The world wasn't rebooting into what it had been. It was rebooting into something new. And no one knew what would wake up next. Chapter 3. The Others. The next flicker didn't come as a ripple. It came as a knock. Elias was in his lab, obsessing over oscillation graphs and energy flux readings when the knock came. 3 soft taps against the glass door. Nothing strange about that, except it was 3:40 a.m., and no one was supposed to be in the building. He hesitated, his pulse rising. Another knock, louder this time. Tap, tap, tap. He approached the door cautiously and peered through the small window. A woman stood there, except she wasn't entirely there. She was flickering faintly, the way an old hologram might, fragments of light bleeding off her outline. Her face was familiar in a deep, unnerving way, as if he had seen her before in a dream, or maybe in a version of his life that had been rewritten during the first flicker. She smiled. The lights above them buzzed and dimmed. Then she stabilized, solid, real, her boots clicking lightly against the tile floor. You can see me, she said. It wasn't a question. It was a certainty. Elias opened the door without realizing he had made the decision. Who are you? He asked, his voice cracking from dryness and fear. The woman stepped inside. She wore a jacket that shimmered in colors the human eye wasn't supposed to process, hues that seemed to rearrange themselves as he looked. My name is Mara, she said. I'm from the other side. The place your world brushed against during the flicker. Elias stared, stunned. He struggled to find words, any words at all. "You're not from here." Mara smiled again, but there was sadness in her eyes. "Not this here," she said. "I come from a layer adjacent to yours. A world not entirely different, but not entirely the same. When the flicker happened, the barriers weakened. Some of us slipped through." Elias felt his knees weaken and slumped into a chair. "You mean you're one of them? One of the newcomers?" Mara nodded. "There are more like me. Some are trying to blend in. Others, not so much. Some places, entire neighborhoods have changed. Buildings from my side, replacing buildings from yours. People waking up in homes they never bought, with families they don't remember." Elias shivered. "Why now? Why reveal yourself to me?" Mara leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Because this isn't over. The first flicker was only the handshake. The next will be the pull." "The pull?" Mara nodded grimly. "Your world is being rewritten, not randomly, but purposefully. There's something out there, something awake now, and it's choosing which pieces of which world survive." Outside the lab, the wind howled against the windows. Or maybe it wasn't the wind at all. Maybe it was the sound of something vast and unseen shifting, rearranging reality one quiet breath at a time. And Elias understood. The flicker wasn't a warning. It was a beginning. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4, Anomalies. Within days of Mara's warning, the world started noticing again. Not little things, not the whispers, not the odd street corners that seemed subtly off, but big things. Things no one could deny. In the small coastal town of Harrow's Bay, an entire pier simply vanished overnight. Boats moored to it were found hovering midair, anchored to nothing but the memory of wood. Witnesses swore they saw a ripple of glass sweep over the ocean at exactly 3:40 a.m., just like the flicker. In the city of Wellington, New Zealand, commuters awoke to find their subway system doubled, one set of tracks running parallel to the original, leading into tunnels that didn't exist on any blueprint. Yet trains could be seen sliding into those tunnels, and sometimes they didn't come back. The media tried to spin it. Natural phenomena, mass hallucinations, rare tectonic illusions. But nobody really believed it. Something was happening, and it was happening faster now. In the lab, Elias and Mara pieced together what little information they could. Mara explained what she knew. "In my world, my layer, we developed a science you never reached. We called it lattice weaving, the art of folding dimensions across one another, sewing possibilities into stable fabrics. But the weave frayed. We lost control. Our world began to slip. When the flicker came, it wasn't just your side reaching out. It was ours, desperately clinging to existence." Elias' hands trembled over his keyboard. He tried to process it. If realities were merging, it wasn't just displacement. It was selection. Someone or something was picking which pieces of which worlds to keep and which to erase. Mara leaned close, her voice grim. The flicker wasn't the end. It was a soft opening, a polite knock. The next one won't be polite. It will be the pull. And if you're not anchored, if your mind isn't stable enough, you might wake up someone else. That night, as the sun dipped and the stars blinked into life, worldwide tremors began. Skies split into vivid auroras at the equator. Gravity fluctuated in pulses, people floating inches off the ground for terrifying seconds. Cities blurred, their shapes distorting like half-forgotten dreams. And then came the most chilling thing. Echoes of voices, whole crowds whispering in languages no linguist could decode, rolling across empty streets, reverberating through glass and steel. Something was pulling reality apart at the seams, searching for the strongest pieces to weave into a new whole. In a desperate act, Elias sent a coded message across every underground network, every conspiracy board, every scientific back channel. If you remember the flicker, if you feel it getting closer, meet at the coordinates below. 12 hours from now. This world is shifting. We either anchor it or we lose it. He didn't know if anyone would come. He didn't know if he would survive the night. But he knew this much. He wasn't about to let the world slip into oblivion without fighting for it. Not without knowing what waited on the other side. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5. The Gathering. The meeting point was an abandoned observatory, a crumbling relic perched on the cliffs overlooking the restless sea. It had once mapped the stars, Elias thought grimly, before the stars themselves began to move. Elias arrived just after sunset. The air was sharp and electric, charged with an unseen current. Far below, the waves glowed faintly, unnatural colors pulsing with the rhythm of a heartbeat too large to comprehend. He waited and waited. At first, it seemed no one would come. But then, one by one, they appeared. A woman in a leather jacket covered in faded sigils. A boy no older than 15, eyes glowing faintly when he spoke. An old professor carrying a device that buzzed and clicked as if detecting invisible fissures. A soldier in a battered exosuit, long since decommissioned, repurposed with strange wires that didn't belong to this world. And more. A gathering of those who remembered the flicker. Those who had felt the second one coming deep in their bones. Inside the observatory's broken dome, under a sky fractured with shimmering anomalies, Elias stood before them and spoke. You're not crazy. You're not broken. You're aware. That's what sets you apart. And it might be the only thing that saves you. He paced slowly across the cracked marble floor, the great telescope looming like a fallen sentinel behind him. The flicker wasn't a glitch. It was a selection. And the pull is coming to choose. We either anchor ourselves or we become unrecognizable. Fragments of lost possibilities. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A woman stood. Her voice shook, but not with fear, with certainty. I lost my husband during the flicker. I don't mean he died. I mean he changed. Same face, same memories, but different inside. It wasn't him anymore. Others nodded grimly. Stories poured forth like a dam breaking. A child who painted landscapes no one recognized. A police officer haunted by memories of crimes that never happened. A scientist who woke up knowing languages she had never studied. Suddenly, Mara appeared at Elias' side, stepping into the circle of firelight. The gathered survivors fell silent, sensing something different about her. She spoke simply. The pull is a test. It seeks cohesion. It seeks will. Those without strong anchors in their identity will be rewritten. A long, heavy silence. Finally, Elias asked the question burning in everyone's mind. How do we anchor ourselves? Mara's eyes gleamed in the strange starlight. By remembering. Memory is gravity. Identity is mass. The more you know yourself, your true self, the harder it is for the pull to rewrite you. But it won't be enough to just hold on individually. You must link your memories together, anchor each other, bind yourselves into a shared reality stronger than the chaos. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Form a lattice of memory, a weave of human consciousness. Only then will you stand a chance when the next flicker comes. A loud crack split the air. The earth shook violently. Above them, the stars twitched. And then, across the sky, a great fracture appeared, as if the heavens themselves were tearing open like a broken mirror. From that rift, shadows began to spill out. Not creatures. Not yet. Just shapes. Silhouettes. Flickering forms that didn't obey normal laws, shifting, rearranging, seeking. The pull had begun, and the world would never be the same again. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. Through the Fracture. The sky shattered like brittle glass. The fracture spread wide above the observatory, a yawning wound between worlds. Through it poured the shapes, black silhouettes that flickered and twitched in broken movements, like badly cut frames of an old film reel. They weren't creatures in the normal sense. They were possibilities, broken, half-formed versions of things that could have existed, might have existed, and now hungered for form. The gathered survivors instinctively pressed together in the observatory's open courtyard, drawn closer by a primal understanding. Separate and be devoured. Together, maybe, just maybe, they could survive. Elias turned to Mara. "They're coming," he said, his voice tight with panic. Mara's eyes burned silver. "They're not coming for your bodies," she whispered. "They're coming for your stories, your memories, your anchors." The ground trembled. The air warped, colors blurring, reality curdling like spoiled milk. And then the first of the shadows touched the edge of the gathering. It was a girl, or the memory of one, flickering with a sad, broken song in her eyes. Her presence stirred something deep inside Elias, an almost memory, a whisper of a sister he had never had, a childhood he had never lived. He staggered backward, clutching his head, as foreign memories tried to inject themselves into his mind. "No!" Mara cried. She gripped Elias by the shoulders and locked eyes with him. "Anchor, Elias. Anchor now." He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to remember. His mother's laugh on warm summer nights. His father teaching him how to fix a radio. His first kiss in the rain. The dusty chalk smell of the university halls. His favorite book, its pages worn and beloved. One by one, he rebuilt himself, brick by precious brick. The false memories burned away, the shadow recoiling with a sound like tearing silk. The others watched, learning quickly. One by one, they closed their eyes and dug deep into the bedrock of their being, summoning childhood pets, heartbreak, songs, scents, flavors, all the tiny threads that wove their true selves together. The shapes circled, frustrated, unable to latch onto solid minds. But then a mistake. The boy with glowing eyes, Liam, faltered. He remembered wrong. Instead of his true childhood, he let slip an invented fantasy, a perfect, pain-free life he had wished for but never lived. The shadows seized him instantly, wrapping around him like living smoke. Liam screamed as his body flickered, twisting between forms, boy, man, machine, beast, until he was pulled upward, swallowed into the fracture. Gone. The gathering recoiled in horror. They realized even one mistake could doom you. Mara raised her hands, her voice steady and powerful. Linked together. Now, think of your true memories, but also think of each other. Form a lattice. Become more than one. Desperation gave them speed. Hand in hand, mind to mind, they formed a web of memory. The professor reciting old formulas to the boy who barely remembered his own name. The woman humming a lullaby that Elias recognized from his childhood. Strangers becoming family, forging bonds faster than fear could break them. The shadows howled, but they could not breach the lattice. The fracture pulsed once, twice, as if recoiling from their defiance. And in that moment, through the gap in the sky, Elias saw it. A glimpse of another Earth. Familiar yet wrong, with gleaming silver cities stacked to the heavens, oceans the color of molten gold, moons that spun too fast across the sky. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. And it was hungry for them. The pull wasn't just random. It was an invitation. A seduction to abandon who they were and become something else. But Elias knew now. As long as they remembered, as long as they chose themselves, they could resist. Maybe even fight back. Above them, the fracture began to close, the shadows retreating like a tide going out. Not defeated, not destroyed, only delayed. And somewhere deep in the fabric of the lattice they had created together, something new stirred. A strength greater than fear. The beginning of a true defense. Elias turned to the others, breathing heavily. "We survived the first pull," he said, "but it was only a scout. The next one will be the real battle." And far above, beyond the closing fracture, something vast watched and waited. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7. The Map of Broken Worlds. For the next 3 days, the survivors didn't sleep. Not truly. Sleep had become dangerous, a door wide open to the pull. Instead, they trained. Under Mara's guidance, they practiced weaving their memories together like threads in a great tapestry. They told their life stories aloud, overlapping voices until their truths tangled into a shared history stronger than any single mind. They memorized each other's childhood homes. They learned each other's scars and victories. They recited names of lost pets, first loves, favorite songs. The lattice grew thicker, tighter, pulsing faintly between them, invisible to the eye but real in ways even physics could no longer deny. On the fourth night, when the sea beneath the cliffs shimmered black and red with silent, shifting currents, Mara called them together. "I found something," she said, her voice low. From her jacket, she produced a device, no larger than a child's slate, but humming with unstable energy. It looked like a map, but not of anything Elias had ever seen. Floating holographs revealed fractured Earths spinning slowly in darkness. Some glowed bright and strong. Others flickered weakly, crumbling apart into debris fields. Mara tapped the center. "This is our world," she said, "the last stable one." Around its spiral dozens, maybe hundreds, of dead or dying realities. Elias felt the hairs on his arms rise. "What happened to them?" he whispered. Mara's mouth was a hard line. They lost. They failed to anchor themselves. When the pull came, they were rewritten and shattered. She zoomed the map in, and they saw it, a path. A faint corridor of surviving shards, leading somewhere deeper, somewhere stranger. At the end of the spiral, pulsing like a heartbeat, was a world none of them could fully comprehend. The Loom, an impossible structure, half city, half living organism, stretching across a planet. It was said to be the place where surviving worlds try to anchor themselves permanently, weaving their memories into a permanent new reality. But reaching it would mean crossing shattered realms, surviving the pull again and again, and facing those who had given up their humanity to survive. Mara spoke into the heavy silence. "We have two choices. Stay here and wait for the next pull, stronger, crueler. Or move, cross the broken worlds, reach the Loom, anchor ourselves there, and maybe save not just us, but everything left of humanity." The group was silent for a long time. Some wept quietly. Some stared up at the splintered stars. But Elias knew, deep in his bones, that standing still was death. He stood. "We go," he said simply. One by one, the others rose too. Mara smiled, for the first time in days, a true, hopeful smile. "Then prepare yourselves," she said. "Tomorrow we leave this world." That night, as the survivors slept huddled in the observatory, dreamless thanks to their new lattice, Mara stood watch at the edge of the cliffs. She stared into the churning, shifting ocean, and unseen by the others, a small tear slid down her cheek, because Mara knew something she hadn't told them yet. The Loom wasn't a sanctuary. It was a battleground, and not all of them would survive the journey. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8, First Crossing. Dawn broke, if it could even be called that anymore. The sun hung fractured in the sky, its light bleeding into strange hues of violet and green. Reality twitched around the survivors, as if impatient for them to choose. Mara gathered the group at the center of the observatory. The holographic map floated before them, the path to the Loom pulsing faintly, a thread of hope through the storm. In her hands, she held a small crystalline device. It glowed with an inner, shifting light. "This is a weave key," Mara said. "It'll open a rift, a crossing point between here and the next shard of reality. But once we step through, there's no coming back." Elias looked around at the others, faces pale but determined. He nodded. Mara pressed the key against the air itself. The world groaned. Space folded inwards, peeling like the layers of an onion, revealing a swirling gateway, a wound in space, humming and alive. Without waiting, Mara stepped through. One by one, the survivors followed. Elias took a deep breath, clutched his strongest memories to his chest like armor, and stepped forward. The world spun, colors inverted. His body unraveled into a billion flickering thoughts, and then reassembled. He stumbled to his knees. The sky above was wrong. There were two suns, low and red, and the ground was a chaotic checkerboard of earth, metal, and water, stitched together as if someone had torn apart different worlds and slapped the pieces together in a mad quilt. A forest that ended abruptly at a steel wall. A river flowing upward into a torn fragment of desert. Entire houses, some modern, some ancient, half sunken into fields of crystal. And the air hummed with a low-frequency sound that made Elias' teeth ache. Mara helped him to his feet. "First shard world," she said grimly. "Stay close. Reality's laws are thin here." They hadn't gone more than a few steps when the first anomaly struck. The ground under one of the survivors, a man named Hart, melted into a reflective pool. He gasped, struggling, but the pool pulled at his memories, flashing images across its surface. His first love, his proudest achievement, his deepest shame. Mara shouted, but was too late. Hart sank into the mirror water, his body dissolving into pure recollection, and then nothing. Only a faint echo of his laughter remained, bouncing sadly across the broken landscape. The group froze, terror locking them in place. Elias clenched his fists. "Keep moving," he barked, surprising even himself with the strength in his voice. "Hold the lattice. Remember yourselves." They moved cautiously now, staying in tight formation, each touch reaffirming the web of memory that protected them. But the world fought back. Trees whispered with voices trying to trick them into losing focus. Structures morphed when not directly looked at, doors becoming windows, windows becoming mouths. Time skipped, moments lost, minutes gained, a few steps forward turning into hours or seconds. Through it all, Elias felt something watching them. A presence. It wasn't Mara's people. It wasn't the pull. It was something else. Something that lived between worlds, feasting on travelers who lost their way. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a rickety metal bridge spanning a chasm that glowed deep red at the bottom. There, standing at the bridge's mouth, was a figure. At first glance, he looked human, a man in a long coat, a hood shadowing his face. But Mara tensed instantly, a hand dropping to the strange dagger at her belt. "That's not one of us," she whispered. The figure smiled, raising a hand in greeting. "Travelers," he said, his voice smooth and inviting. "You're lost, but you don't have to be. Come, I can guide you safely to the loom." Behind him, the bridge shimmered, a clear path laid out like a promise. Elias' heart hammered. Trust the wrong thing here, and they could be rewritten in ways they wouldn't even realize until it was too late. He glanced at Mara, at the survivors, at the broken world behind them, and the false path ahead. And he knew. The first real choice of their journey had come. End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9. The False Bridge. Elias stared at the stranger. The man's smile was warm, inviting. His eyes sparkled with familiarity, a trick of the pull, no doubt, mimicking fragments of people they'd known. The bridge behind him glowed steadily, a beacon of ease, of promise. A temptation. Mara stepped forward sharply. "No," she said, her voice like iron. "He's an echo." The group murmured in fear. They'd heard of echoes, living illusions birthed by broken worlds, fragments of lost souls and false memories stitched into sentient traps. The echo laughed, an easy musical sound. "Suit yourselves," he said. "Stay here in the chaos. You'll be torn apart piece by piece. I offer you sanctuary. I offer you the loom itself." He spread his arms. Behind him, the bridge shimmered, an image of safety, of light. But then Elias noticed it. The faint distortion at the edges. The subtle slip in the echo's form. His hands too smooth, his movements too perfect. It wasn't real. The bridge wasn't leading to the loom. It was leading into the fracture itself, into oblivion. Elias stepped forward, drawing on the strength of the lattice, linking them. "We don't need your path," he said. "We make our own." The echo's smile twisted, the friendliness melting into something predatory. "So be it," the echo hissed. The world shifted violently. The bridge collapsed into 1,000 writhing tendrils of light, lashing toward them. The survivors braced, linking hands, linking minds. The lattice glowed, not visible in the normal sense, but felt, a web of anchored memories humming against the attack. Tendrils struck the barrier, sparks flew, echoes of lost timelines screamed against their shield. Elias fought to hold the lattice together, his mind flashing with memories. His childhood treehouse, the first dog he ever loved, the library where he hid during storms, the voice of his mother calling him home for dinner. Each memory fed the lattice, strengthening it. The echo screamed in rage, its form unraveling into tatters of smoke and half-heard lullabies. The bridge shattered completely, the illusion dying with it. When the storm ended, the world seemed emptier. The colors faded back into their muted nightmare hues. The survivors staggered, exhausted but alive. Mara knelt, breathing hard. "They'll get smarter," she warned. "Next time it won't be so obvious. They'll use faces we know. Memories we forgot. Elias nodded grimly. "We have to move. Fast." The survivors pressed onward, deeper into the shard world. Every step forward was a battle not just against the broken terrain, but against the seduction of forgetting, the false comforts offered by the pull. As twilight, or what passed for it here, fell, they reached the edge of a great canyon. In the distance, across a swirling, chaotic sky, the next shard pulsed faintly, a ruined city floating among the stars, tethered by thin bridges of light. That was their next step toward the loom. But across the canyon, moving toward them in steady, patient rows, they saw them for the first time. The woven, creatures stitched together from the broken memories of 1,000 lost worlds. Not mindless, but worse organized. And they were waiting. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10, the first battle. The woven approached slowly, deliberately, like a tide that could not be stopped. Up close, they were worse than anyone had imagined. Faces half familiar and half forgotten, stitched together like mismatched cloth. Eyes that flickered between sorrow and rage. Bodies twisted with fragments of other lives. A soldier's arm here, a poet's hand there, a child's laugh sewn into a mouth that didn't fit. They were the ultimate warning. What happened when memory failed? When identity unraveled and the pull finished its work? Elias tightened the lattice with the others. He could feel their collective memories humming like taut wires between them. Mara raised the weave key. It glowed fiercely in her palm, resonating with their shared reality. "Hold your true selves," she shouted over the growing roar, "or the woven will tear you into pieces of who you might have been." The ground shuddered as the woven charged. The first impact was brutal. A woven creature, bearing 3 arms and a shifting, screaming face, slammed into their shield. The lattice flared bright as the force of memory repelled it, but the effort sent ripples of pain through the survivors' minds. 2 others followed, hulking figures made of forgotten soldiers and broken dreams, battering the shield in rhythmic, coordinated strikes. Boom, boom, boom. Each strike wasn't just physical, it was a psychic attack. Elias felt it. Half-formed memories tried to slip inside his mind. A life he never lived, a daughter he never had, a betrayal he never made. He gritted his teeth and forced them out, focusing instead on his truth. The woven screamed in frustration, their forms glitching, flickering between moments they had stolen but could not hold. Then something unexpected happened. Lena, the youngest survivor, barely 20, small and fierce, changed. As a woven broke through a weak spot in the lattice and lunged at her, Lena threw up her hands instinctively, and the air rippled outward in a shock wave of light. The woven staggered back, shrieking, smoke pouring from its patchwork seams. The group stared in shock. Mara's eyes widened. "It's starting," she said under her breath. "Some of you are evolving." The pull hadn't just been trying to destroy them. It had been testing them. And those strong enough to hold their memories could bend the shattered laws of these broken worlds. Fueled by hope, the survivors pushed back. One man remembered his training as a boxer and used it to deliver crushing psychic blows to the woven. Another woman sang a lullaby her grandmother taught her, and the melody burned like acid against the woven's unstable forms. Elias, pulling strength from every book he ever loved, rewrote the ground beneath one woven, trapping it in a maze of shifting stone. Together they fought, not with weapons, but with who they were. The woven, sensing the shift, faltered. They hissed and roared, retreating like smoke pulled back into the fracture from which they came. The survivors stood, panting, bruised but victorious, atop the fractured cliff. They had won. Barely. But as the woven vanished into the churning rift, they left behind something. A symbol burned into the earth, an ancient sigil, pulsing faintly. It was the same symbol Elias had seen on Mara's dagger. He turned to her sharply. "You knew," he said. "You knew about them. About the woven." Mara looked at him, her face lined with pain. "There's more you need to know," she said quietly. "About me. About the loom, about why I led you here, and why if we fail, it won't just be this world that dies." The sky above them rumbled, and far in the distance, the next shard world loomed, a city caught in eternal twilight, waiting for them. The journey to the loom had just begun, but trust once fractured would be far harder to repair. End of Chapter 10. Chapter 11, Mara's Secret. The survivors set up camp just beyond the battlefield. They lit no fires. The sky above was filled with faint ripples of reality, and light could attract unwanted attention. Instead, they sat in a circle, surrounded by broken stones and whispers from forgotten worlds. Mara stood in the center, her shadow long and wavering against the cracked ground. Everyone watched her in silence. They deserve answers. Mara sighed, looking heavier than Elias had ever seen her. "You know me as a traveler between worlds," she said. "And that's true, but it's not the whole truth." She unhooked the dagger from her belt, the one marked with the woven sigil, and laid it on the ground between them. The blade shimmered, revealing etched lines across its surface, a web of intersecting paths, points, and broken circles. "I was created," Mara said softly, "by the loom." A sharp intake of breath from the group. "I was woven, not born. A guardian, a guide, but also a tool. I was made to find survivors like you, to bring you back. Because the loom is not a sanctuary. It's a machine. A machine that chooses who and what will build the next true reality." Elias felt the ground tilt beneath him. He forced himself to speak. "You mean it's judging us?" Mara nodded, her face grim. "Every choice you make, every memory you cling to or let go, every act of courage or betrayal, the loom records it all. And when you reach it, if you reach it, it will decide whether your world deserves to be woven into the future." Silence gripped the camp. Some wept quietly, some shook with rage. Some simply stared into the broken sky, feeling their hope fray at the edges. Finally, Elias found his voice again. "Why tell us now?" Mara's expression softened, a rare, raw glimpse into her soul. "Because," she said, "you've already passed the first test. You fought the woven. You protected each other. You remembered who you were. You chose to move forward even knowing the cost." She looked at each of them, her voice thick with emotion. "You're stronger than you know. Strong enough, maybe, to survive the final crossing. But you had to know the truth before we faced what comes next. Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them shuddered. From the distant edge of the twilight shard, a low, mournful bell sounded, deep and resonant, carrying across the broken landscape. Mara paled. "The City of Echoes," she whispered. "The next shard, the most dangerous yet." She turned to the group, her eyes hard. "There, your memories won't just be attacked. They'll be used against you. The City of Echoes can twist your strongest moments into traps. If you lose yourself, you won't just die. You'll become one of them." She pointed to the horizon, where faint figures moved in the perpetual twilight. Not the woven, something worse. Elias swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Mara's words settle into his bones. No more illusions. No more easy choices. The loom was not salvation. It was judgment. And they were still very, very far from home. End of Chapter 11. Chapter 12. City of Echoes. The City of Echoes was a dead place, but it sang. Low, fractured songs drifted through the shattered streets, weaving through crumbling skyscrapers and collapsed monuments. The melodies were soft at first, almost gentle, but carried a strange weight, like 1,000 lost voices trying to remember who they had once been. The survivors stood at the outskirts, staring at the sprawling maze of broken memory ahead. No two buildings were the same. A Gothic cathedral merged into a neon-lit bazaar. Ancient stone castles twisted into abandoned suburban homes. Streets paved in books, each title half erased, half invented. The entire city shimmered under a false twilight sky, stuck between day and night. Mara gave one final warning. In here, your strongest memories will turn against you. The city will pull from your heart, your grief, your guilt, your hope, and twist it. You must not trust what you see. The group tightened their lattice, memories interweaving like steel cables. Songs sung together, shared laughs, moments of grief, promises made. It throbbed around them, invisible but present, their only shield. Together, they stepped into the City of Echoes. At first, it seemed almost manageable. They stuck together. They moved carefully. But soon, the city began to whisper. Elias heard his father's voice, a man who had died decades ago, calling to him from a crumbling alley. Lena saw her childhood home, perfectly intact, nestled between two ruined towers. Mara herself faltered when she glimpsed a fragment of her own forgotten life, a life she wasn't supposed to have, a mother she had never known. The lattice strained under the pressure of conflicting memories. The city fed on it. Halfway through the labyrinth, they found him. At the center of a ruined plaza, beneath a twisted clock tower frozen at 3:40, the mark of the flicker, a figure sat. A man no older than Elias, with shaggy hair and clothes that flickered between styles, jeans, robes, armor, all bleeding into one another. He was weeping. Mara approached cautiously. "Careful," she murmured to Elias. "Some echoes are so strong, they think they are real." But when the man looked up, there was something different about him. His eyes, they were aware. Not hollow like the others. Alive. The man struggled to his feet. "You're real," he rasped. His voice cracked from disuse. "Not constructs. Not the city. I." He clutched at his head. "I was a survivor. Like you. I came through the first pull." The group tensed. Elias stepped forward. "What happened?" The man laughed bitterly. "I tried to cross the city alone. I thought I could resist it. I was wrong. It peeled me apart, made me live every possible life I could have had. Every victory, every mistake, every death." He looked at them with hollow exhaustion. "I anchored myself with a memory, but it wasn't enough." He pointed at the lattice humming around them. That's why you're still whole. Together, you're stronger." He sagged back against the ruined clock tower. "But listen carefully." He grasped Elias's wrist with surprising strength. "The loom isn't what they say it is. It's alive. It wants something. And when you reach it, you'll have to decide whether to become part of it or destroy it. The survivors recoiled, stunned. Mara's face was stone. The man smiled sadly. You won't reach the loom unless you pass through the core of the city. The memory wells. He pointed deeper into the maze, toward a series of towers spiraling upward like broken glass fingers. There, the city will show you your greatest temptation. It won't kill you. It'll try to make you forget why you ever wanted to survive. The wind shifted. The city noticed them now. The ground quivered. Shadows began pouring from doorways, alleys, and windows, living memories twisted into hostile forms, eager to devour what was left of their minds. There was no more time to think. Elias turned to the others, voice sharp. We move. Now. Hand in hand, mind to mind, they ran toward the memory wells, toward the heart of the city, toward the next trial that would determine the fate of their souls. End of chapter 12. Milky Way, would you like to move into chapter 13 next? Chapter 13, The Memory Wells. The city of echoes narrowed into a vast courtyard. At its center rose 5 towering spirals, glass-like, humming with a low, aching sound that resonated inside their skulls. The memory wells. Each tower shimmered with scenes, fragments of lives unlived, victories unattained, and dreams just out of reach. The wells didn't attack with teeth or claws. They seduced. Mara drew the group into a tight circle. The wells will try to fracture you, she warned. They'll show you the life you could have had if you abandon your anchor. Remember, memory is survival. Memory is gravity. One by one, they would have to face their temptation alone. There was no way around it. Only through. First was Lena. The young woman trembled as she stepped toward the first well. Immediately, a vision wrapped around her, a golden field under a bright, unbroken sun. Her parents stood waiting for her, arms outstretched, whole and alive. Tears streamed down Lena's face. Come home, the memory whispered. Let go. Stay. Lena nearly stumbled forward, but at the last moment, she gritted her teeth and tore her gaze away, clutching the memory of her real life, the long nights, the hunger, the hard-earned survival. The vision shattered like brittle glass. She returned to the group, shaken but whole. One by one, the survivors faced their wells. Each saw something different. A lost child returned. A life without regret. A second chance at love. A version of themselves without guilt, without scars. Some faltered. 2 members gave in, stepping willingly into the wells and vanishing without a sound. There was no way to save them. Each loss sent a sickening jolt through the lattice, their absence like snapped cords weakening the entire web. Then it was Elias's turn. He stepped forward. At once, the world shifted. He stood in a warm, sunlit home, filled with books stacked floor to ceiling, laughter echoing through the halls. A woman, his wife, kissed him gently on the forehead. Children ran past, giggling. Peace. Belonging. A life without the pull, without the fight, without fear. Tears blurred Elias's vision. He could stay. He wanted to stay. You deserve this, the memory whispered. You fought enough. Let go. But deep inside him, something stirred, a sharp memory, older and fiercer than comfort. His mother's voice, stern but loving. The right path isn't always the easy one, Elias. If you lose yourself, you lose everyone who depends on you. He clenched his fists, forced himself to remember the others, Lena, Mara, the survivors still fighting. With a cry of rage and grief, he ripped himself from the illusion. The vision collapsed. He stumbled back to the group, pale, gasping, but intact. Only Mara remained. She walked slowly to the last well. The others watched anxiously, but instead of fighting it, Mara stopped. She stared into the well's swirling depths with a strange, almost yearning expression. Elias felt the lattice waver, a tremor of doubt. Mara, he called out. She didn't respond. The well pulsed, and in it Elias glimpsed her vision. A world where she was human, a real childhood, a real family, a life of laughter, dreams, choices. Not a construct, not a tool. Free. Mara's hand drifted toward the well. The lattice strained. If she fell, the entire weave could collapse. Elias moved instinctively, grabbing her wrist, anchoring her. "You're already real," he said fiercely. "You're real because you chose to fight with us. You are more than what you were made to be." Mara's eyes filled with tears. For a heartbeat, the city trembled around them, uncertain which truth would win. Then Mara stepped back. The well cracked, splintering into shards of light, and the pull of the illusions finally faded. They had survived. Battered, weakened, but still together. As they regrouped, the ground beneath the City of Echoes began to rumble. The path ahead revealed itself. A vast spiral staircase descending into a shimmering pit at the city's heart, the final portal leading out of the shard world. But even as they moved toward it, Elias couldn't shake the feeling. Something had seen them, something beyond the city, and it was waiting for them in the space between worlds. End of Chapter 13. Chapter 14. The Rift Between. The spiral staircase stretched down into endless twilight. Each step echoed not just in sound, but through memory itself, whispers of past moments brushing against their skin like invisible fingers. As they descended deeper, the City of Echoes melted away above them, swallowed by a shifting mist. Ahead lay the rift between, the chaotic boundary where broken worlds collided and bled into one another, a place even Mara had warned them to fear. Here there were no rules, no gravity, no time. Only what mattered. Only memory could keep them whole. As they crossed the final threshold, the survivors staggered. The world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of shifting fragments. Mountains upside down, oceans flowing through skies of shattered glass, streets that twisted into Mobius loops, leading endlessly back to themselves. Shapes moved in the fog, not hostile but watching. Ancient things, older than the flicker, older than the loom itself. Architects, spectators, or maybe just scavengers waiting for them to fail. The lattice trembled. Even here, memory fought to stay intact, but the strain was immense. Mara called out to them, her voice barely carrying through the shifting currents. "Anchor together. Tell your memories aloud now. Strengthen the weave." One by one, they began to shout their truths into the chaos. "My name is Lena, and I used to race the rain home from school. I am Tomas, and I built a radio out of scrap with my father when I was 10. I am Elias Vance, and I still remember the smell of old books in my mother's library." The rift howled around them, but the memories held, threads weaving tighter, forming a glowing net that fought the entropy. But then a crack appeared. Tomas, strong, steady Tomas, faltered. A wave of uncertainty hit him. A memory of a different life, one where he hadn't survived the first pull, where he had betrayed his friends to save himself. It wasn't real, but here in the rift, doubt was as deadly as truth. Tomas cried out, clutching his head. His form flickered, phasing between two versions of himself, one loyal, one monstrous. If he collapsed, the rift could tear through the lattice like a knife. Elias acted without thinking. He crossed the broken space, reaching Tomas just as the man dropped to his knees. "Tomas!" Elias shouted. "Remember, you stayed. You fought beside us. You chose this." For a moment, Tomas's eyes glowed silver, his mind torn in two directions. The rift screamed, sensing weakness. Then, Tomas slammed his fist against the ground, anchoring himself with a roar of rage. The false memories shattered like broken mirrors, drifting into the void. Tomas gasped, whole again. The group reformed, tighter than ever. Even here, even in the bleeding heart of broken realities, they chose themselves. Their real selves. and that made them dangerous. The rift, sensing it could not consume them, began to collapse inward, folding away like a dying storm. Ahead, through the last veil of mist, a gate appeared. A towering structure of woven light and shadow, neither solid nor liquid, spinning endlessly upon itself. Beyond it lay the loom, and whatever awaited them inside. As they approached the gate, Mara slowed. She turned to Elias, her face pale. "This is where the final test begins," she said. "Beyond that gate, the loom will offer you everything you've ever wanted. It will show you a perfect world. And then it will ask you to surrender your true self to become part of its weave." Elias swallowed hard. "And if we refuse?" Mara's eyes darkened. "Then we must fight the loom itself." The gate pulsed, sensing them. The final trial had begun. The future of their memories, and perhaps the future of all realities, depended on what they chose next. And somewhere deep inside the loom, something was already watching, waiting, whispering, weaving. End of chapter 14. Chapter 15, The Weaving of Worlds. The gate loomed before them, spinning slowly, a cosmic wheel woven from strands of memory, starlight, and forgotten dreams. One by one, the survivors stepped through. There was no sensation of movement, no falling, no wind, only becoming. Elias blinked, and the world snapped into focus. He stood on a street lined with trees heavy with golden leaves. Children played, laughter echoing through the crisp air. Bookstores, cafes, and old libraries lined the avenue, and every face he passed wore a smile that filled him with impossible warmth. It was perfect, too perfect. He recognized the street. It was from a novel he loved as a boy. A place he had always wished existed. A place where he belonged. For a moment he faltered. What harm would it do to stay? Around him, the survivors faced their own paradises. Lena stood at the gates of a university she had dreamed of attending, but never could. Tomas embraced a family he had lost long ago. Others wept openly, wandering into worlds built from their purest hopes. Above all, a soft, gentle voice whispered, "You have suffered enough. Let go. Be part of something beautiful. Be woven into eternity." It would be so easy. But deep inside, Elias felt the lattice straining, memories flickering, bonds weakening. If they all surrendered, their true selves would dissolve into the loom, their memories harvested to fuel it. He clenched his fists. "Remember," he whispered fiercely. "Remember who you are." He forced himself to recall the desperate run through the city of echoes, the fight against the woven, the broken, beautiful people who had stood with him in the rift. One by one, he tore the illusion apart. The golden leaves burned away. The laughing children vanished into smoke. The world cracked, and the loom's true shape revealed itself. It was no paradise. It was a vast mind pulsing with thought, a living archive of stolen worlds, bound together into an endless, seething tapestry. The loom had no mercy. It offered comfort as bait, to strip survivors of their truth, their struggles, their choices, and add them to its endless weave. It wasn't saving realities. It was consuming them. Elias stumbled back to the group, but something was wrong. Tomas stood apart, his face twisted with longing and anger. "Why fight?" Tomas said. His voice was cracked hollow. "We could be happy. We could live without fear." Mara stepped forward. "Tomas, listen to me." But Tomas raised a hand, and the loom's thread stirred at his command. He had chosen to surrender, chosen to weave himself into the loom. And to do it, he had to break the others who still resisted. The loom flared behind him, threads of blinding light lashing toward the survivors. The final battle had begun. Not against monsters, not against shadows, against their own dreams, against the people they loved, against the choice to simply give in. Elias ducked the first blast of threadlight and turned to Mara. "How do we fight it?" Mara's face was grim. "We don't destroy the loom," she said. "We sever ourselves from it. We tear our memories free, all the pain, all the beauty, and we build something the loom can't absorb. Our own reality." The survivors tightened the lattice, raw, battered memories forming a fragile, living shield. Elias looked up at the seething, monstrous beauty of the loom and made his choice. They would not be woven. They would weave themselves. End of chapter 15. Chapter 16, Severance. Tomas raised his hands. The loom responded instantly, threads of pure memory light whipping outward, slicing through the mist, reshaping the battlefield. The survivors scattered as threads lashed at them, trying to stitch them into the loom's growing tapestry. The ground cracked, warping into impossible shapes. A classroom Elias remembered from childhood twisted into a battlefield. A crumbling tower spun into a dreamlike playground filled with laughing ghosts. A familiar library burned with blue fire, the scent of smoke laced with old memories. Elias rolled aside as a razor-thin thread sliced into the earth where he had stood. The thread hissed, not metal, not light, but thought itself, honed into a blade. Mara shouted over the chaos. "Focus. You can't fight the loom with strength. Only with your anchor memories. Hold your true self, or be rewritten." Lena screamed as a thread grazed her shoulder. For a moment her form flickered, nearly splitting into two versions of herself. One brave, one broken. Elias sprinted to her side, grabbing her hand. "Lena, who are you?" Through gritted teeth, tears streaming down her face, she shouted, "I am Lena Sorrel. I race the rain. I build a life from nothing." The lattice between them flared, burning the attacking threads away. Across the battlefield, Tomas moved like a god, twisting the loom's power, creating illusions to fracture their memories. Lena's mother stood before her, beckoning. Mara's creator, or a perfect illusion of her, whispered promises of freedom. Elias saw his father again, offering a home he could never have. The survivors fought through it, step by brutal step. Memory was weapon. Memory was shield. Memory was salvation. Then Elias saw it. At the center of the loom's core, a glowing nexus, a pulsing heart of thought where all memories merged. If they could reach it, if they could sever their memories from its grasp, the loom would lose control. But Tomas blocked the way, surrounded by writhing tendrils of lost realities. Mara appeared at Elias's side, blood dripping from a wound stitched by a grazing thread. "I'll distract him," she gasped. "You sever the nexus. Go. Now." Elias hesitated, but he knew there was no time. He nodded. Mara sprinted toward Tomas, weaving a storm of blinding memories around her. Childhood smiles, battles fought, friends lost and found. Tomas screamed, lashing at her with the loom's threads, but she was a firestorm of who she truly was, impossible to bind. Elias and Lena raced toward the nexus. Each step, reality collapsed and rebuilt itself around them. Oceans of faces, broken timelines, collapsing cities. Threads slashed past them, trying to trap them in 1,000 alternate lives. At the nexus, the light was blinding. Memories from every fallen world swirled in an endless storm. They had to cut themselves free. Elias grasped Lena's hand. "Anchor to me," he shouted. Together they focused. The laughter of friends under a broken sky. The pain of losing home after home. The choice to keep fighting, even when it would have been easier to forget. Their memories condensed, forming a blade of pure intention. With a scream of defiance, Elias plunged the blade into the nexus. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the world tore apart. A soundless explosion shattered the loom's grasp, severing the survivors' memories from its weave. The stolen reality screamed, shuddered, and collapsed inward like dying stars. The battlefield cracked. The false paradises burned away. Tomas howled, a sound of rage and heartbreak as the loom's power left him. He crumpled to the ground, empty, broken, and the loom itself, the monstrous, endless mind, began to collapse. Mara staggered back to Elias and Lena, her face pale but alive. "You did it," she said hoarsely. "You severed the binding." The sky overhead, what little remained of it, began to twist open, revealing something beyond. A blank canvas, pure untouched reality, waiting for them, for what they would choose to create. End of Chapter 16. Chapter 17, A New Weave. The loom was gone. All around them, silence fell. Not the silence of death, but the silence of possibility. The survivors stood on a broken platform, suspended in endless twilight. Above them, beyond them, stretched a blank expanse, a sky with no stars, a world with no ground, a universe that had not yet chosen its shape. They were no longer bound to anyone else's design, but they were no longer held together by anything except each other. Elias sat down first. He felt the exhaustion hit him all at once, a tidal wave of everything they had endured. The memories they fought to protect. The friends they had lost, Hart, Tomas, the others who had surrendered to the pull. The versions of themselves they would never become. The victory was real, but so was the grief. Lena lowered herself beside him, hugging her knees to her chest. Tears slid down her face silently. Tears for everything, for nothing. Elias simply placed a hand on her shoulder. No words. There weren't any words big enough. Mara remained standing. The wind, or something like a wind, stirred her hair as she looked out over the blank canvas, stretching forever. "We have a choice," she said quietly. Her voice shook a little, not from fear, but from awe. "We can weave a new world, one that belongs to us, but will not be easy. We must decide what memories, what dreams are worth building into the foundation." She turned back to them, her eyes shining. "We can't bring back the old worlds. We can't undo the losses, but we can honor them." The survivors gathered in a rough circle. They held hands, the physical touch grounding them, weaving their hearts and minds one final time. Elias spoke first. "I want a world where memory matters, where no one is forgotten." Lena spoke next. "I want a world where people can fall and still be helped back up." The others followed. "A world of laughter even after grief. A world where dreams don't cost who you are. A world that remembers its scars and grows stronger because of them." And Mara last. "A world where even constructs like me are real, because we choose to love, to fight, to hope." Their words spun upward, not in sound, but in meaning. The blank canvas shimmered, rippled, and then began to glow. Threads of light emerged from the survivors' hearts, vibrant, fierce, beautiful, weaving into a new tapestry. Not perfect, not painless, but real. And that made it stronger than anything the loom could have created. As the first threads wove sky and earth into being, Elias felt a strange peace settle inside him. They had lost so much. They had almost lost themselves. But in the end, they had chosen. And choice was the truest kind of freedom. The new world blossomed around them, golden skies painted with endless dawns, rivers flowing with memories yet to be made, forests grown from the seeds of old dreams. It wasn't finished. It never would be. But it was theirs. And somewhere, far beyond the veils of the broken universes, in places where the stars themselves might one day remember, the loom's long shadow faded, not destroyed, but replaced by a different weave, a stronger one, a living one, made by those who had chosen to remember, made by those who chose to be free. End of Chapter 17. Epilogue, The Weaver's Gate. Years passed, but time was not the same here. It didn't march forward like a tyrant. It flowed gentle, patient, like a river weaving through endless valleys. The world the survivors built thrived. golden forests stretched toward sapphire skies. Sea sang softly to the shores. Towns rose where laughter was the first stone laid, and songs became the mortar holding walls together. There were scars in this world, places where memories of battles and losses were honored, not hidden. In these groves and gardens, people sat and told stories, old and new, so that no part of who they were would ever be forgotten. Elias stood on a grassy hill overlooking one of the first villages. The wind carried scents of rain and growing things. He was older now, streaks of silver in his hair, but his eyes still burned with that same steady flame. Beside him stood Lena, laughing as she tried to teach children how to build kites from shimmering, memory-infused reeds. And Mara, not a tool anymore, not a construct, just Mara, free in every way she had once only dreamed of being. Together, they had become the first weavers, builders of a new reality. At the edge of the world they had woven, a great gate stood, not locked, not hidden, a simple archway of living wood and woven light, humming with welcoming song. It was called the Weaver's Gate. It led outward, to the shattered remnants of other realities still adrift beyond the rift. A reminder that even after survival, there would always be choices to make. Protect what they had built, or open their hands and hearts to those still lost. One evening, as the twin moons hung low in the sky, a figure appeared at the edge of the gate, tattered, weary, but alive, a traveler, their eyes wide with wonder and fear. The fields fell silent as people gathered, whispering, remembering the dangers they had once fled. Elias stepped forward. He looked back once at Mara and Lena. Both smiled and nodded. He turned to the traveler and extended a hand. "Welcome," he said simply. "If you remember who you are, you're already part of us." The gate shimmered. The world expanded, not with conquest, not with force, but with memory, choice, hope. The weave grew. The story continued. And in the gentle breath of the wind, if you listened closely, you could hear it. The world singing itself whole again. The end.